Imagine standing in Manhattan in the mid-1970s. The city is literally teetering on the edge of total bankruptcy.
Right. I mean, the federal government famously refused to bail them out.
Exactly. Investors are fleeing, crime is spiking, the streets are unkempt, property values have just completely flatlined.
It was bad. Anyone with capital is running away from this financial fire as fast as they can.
Yeah, but right at that exact moment, when everyone else is bailing out, a 20-something kid from Queens decides to run directly inside the burning building.
He runs right in.
You have to try and build a luxury glass monument right on top of the ashes.
It really is the ultimate contrarian bet. Because, when we look at skyscrapers, it's so easy to just see the engineering.
Sure, the steel, the concrete, the glass.
Right. But when you look at the origins of the real estate empire built by Donald Trump in those early years, you realize you aren't just looking at buildings.
No.
No, you are looking at a very specific psychology, a philosophy literally cast in pink marble and brass.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a microscopic look at the origins of that very empire.
And it is a fascinating journey.
It really is. We want to figure out how exactly a builder's son from the outer boroughs of New York takes a localized, highly utilitarian family business and, completely forges it into a global symbol of uncompromising luxury.
It's a huge pivot.
A massive pivot. And for you listening, whether you're a student of business, history, or you're just intensely curious about how massive brands are built from the ground up, this exploration of early ambition, relentless negotiation, and massive risk-taking is going to give you a lot to unpack today.
We really have to understand the mechanics of this transformation.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a geographic shift across the river into Manhattan.
Right.
It was a complete overhaul of what real estate could actually represent.
But to understand those gold-plated penthouses, we really have to start with the dirt, right? The blueprints of his childhood.
Absolutely. We have to start with the man who laid out those blueprints, his father, Fred Trump.
Yeah, Fred was a wildly successful, self-made millionaire in his own right. But his business model couldn't have been more different from what we associate with the Trump brand today.
Completely different. Fred Trump built his fortune constructing affordable middle-class rental buildings out in Queens and Brooklyn.
Right, we are talking about sheer volume here.
Yeah, rent collection, boiler maintenance, fixing leaky roofs. It was incredibly pragmatic, grounded, and honestly completely unglamorous.
You're dealing with the nuts and bolts of property management. It's super reliable, but it's entirely devoid of glitz.
Exactly. But while Fred's buildings were strictly utilitarian, the worldview he instilled in his children, Donald was born in 1946, the fourth of 5 kids, that worldview was incredibly intense.
Intense is a good word for it. From what we looked at, Fred raised his sons with iron discipline and this really stark, uncompromising philosophy.
He taught them that the world is divided entirely into 2 categories, winners and losers.
Right, but we have to pay attention to the specific vocabulary Fred used here. He didn't just tell his sons to be winners, did he?
No, he didn't. He told them to be killers.
Wow.
Yeah, in his lexicon, a killer wasn't just someone who succeeded, It was someone who dominated their environment.
Dominated.
Right. Donald was taught from a very young age to negotiate ruthlessly, to never show a single ounce of weakness, and always, under all circumstances, strive to be the absolute best.
It sounds like he was being trained from birth for a zero-sum game.
That's exactly what it was.
Like, if someone else is winning, you are actively losing.
Yeah.
And apparently, Donald had a bit of a rebellious streak in his youth, right? Which prompted Fred to send him to the New York Military Academy.
He did.
So I have to wonder, did that structured military environment clash with this wild, aggressive, killer instinct his dad taught him? Or did it just fuel it?
It didn't clash at all, actually. It really refined it.
How so?
Well, the military academy took that raw, aggressive drive and placed it within a highly structured framework. It taught him extreme discipline, strict hierarchy, and maybe most importantly, how to operate under intense, continuous pressure.
So he learned the actual mechanics of command and control.
Exactly. And from there, he goes on to study economics at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you have this really interesting cocktail forming here. You've got the street-level toughness and, frankly, the paranoia of his father's zero-sum philosophy.
Right.
Plus the rigid discipline of a military academy. And you top it off with the elite academic credentials of an Ivy League business school.
It's a potent mix.
But here's my question. If you are raised to believe the world is divided into predators and prey, does that philosophy act as the engine driving you forward? Or is it just the steering wheel guiding the tactics you use?
Oh, it has to be the engine. I mean, the need to prove oneself as a killer in a father's eyes creates an ambition that is completely insatiable.
Because you can never stop proving it?
Exactly. If you buy into that zero-sum worldview, you can never actually rest on your laurels. Stopping means you become prey. You have to constantly hunt for the next victory just to prove you aren't a loser.
Wow, so the tactics can change depending on the deal, but that fundamental paranoia and drive, that is the combustion engine.
That's the engine, yeah.
But here's the catch with being raised in that kind of household. You can't just take a comfortable salary at your dad's company,
No, you can't.
right? Because renting out middle-class apartments in Brooklyn doesn't make you a dominant force if your dad already conquered that exact world.
He had to step out of the shadow.
To prove he was a winner, he needed a sandbox where his dad hadn't already won. Which brings us to a project called Swifton Village in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Right, this is such a crucial proving ground. So
Okay.
armed with his Wharton degree, Donald formally joins the family business, which was then called Elizabeth Trump and Son.
Okay.
But like you said, he needs his own distinct victory. His father had purchased this rundown apartment complex in Cincinnati, and it was struggling massively.
How bad was it?
It had a disastrous 66% vacancy rate.
Okay, let's break down what that actually means for a second.
Mm.
If a massive apartment complex is two-thirds empty, it is bleeding cash at an alarming rate.
Oh, totally.
The property taxes, the heating, the core maintenance, those costs don't just go away because the rooms are empty.
It's a sinking ship. But Donald steps in, working with a budget of about $500,000, and he executes this incredible turnaround.
So what does he do?
He applies that intense, aggressive management style. He pushes for rapid aesthetic renovations to make the place look appealing. He aggressively markets the units, and he actually manages to take that complex from 66% vacant all the way down to 0% vacancy.
Wait, 0%?
Every single unit filled.
That is wild. And eventually they sell it for a highly profitable return.
Yeah, he proved he had the operational chops right there. He could take a failing, bleeding asset and turn it into a cash cow.
But looking at the timeline, a realization seems to hit him right after this massive success. Building solid outer borough or Midwestern housing was never going to buy him fame.
No, it
He
wasn't.
wasn't going to get his name in the papers. So he sets his sights firmly on Manhattan.
They're the big leagues.
Right. And I really have to push back on the logic of this decision for a second. Think about the risk here. It's like walking away from a guaranteed, highly profitable starting spot on a minor league team to bet absolutely everything on a wild tryout for the Yankees.
In a stadium that's actively falling apart?
Exactly. Why walk away from a proven, wealth-generating family formula?
Well, you have to view it through the lens of that childhood philosophy. For Fred Trump, wealth was the finish line. The quiet accumulation of capital in the outer boroughs was his definition of winning.
Right.
But for the son, operating in a towering father's shadow, wealth without visibility just wasn't enough. The killer philosophy demanded dominance and, importantly, widespread recognition. Cincinnati, Ohio, no matter how profitable the deal is, does not offer a global stage. Manhattan does.
Even a Manhattan that is physically falling apart.
Right.
We really need to paint the picture for you guys listening of what New York City looked like in the early 1970s. It wasn't the safe, gleaming global capital of luxury real estate that it is today.
Not at all.
As we mentioned earlier, the city was in the grips of a severe, almost existential financial crisis.
Yeah, you had massive garbage strikes, rampant crime, severe social tensions. The infrastructure was just crumbling.
That was grim.
Investors were pulling their money out of the city at a terrifying rate.
Which makes his pivot so fascinating. I mean, in investing, there is a concept known as contrarianism, going completely against the herd.
Right.
When everyone else is selling out of sheer panic, the contrarian buys. Where everyone else saw urban decay and irreversible ruin, Trump saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Because property prices had hit rock bottom, he believed the city eventually had to recover.
But he didn't just want to buy cheap real estate and, sit on it and wait.
No, his vision was incredibly specific. He believed luxury real estate would be the ultimate key to success.
Which is so counterintuitive.
Right. He wasn't trying to build affordable housing in Manhattan. He looked at a depressed, dirty, bankrupt city and decided the antidote was uncompromising glitz and glamour.
It's a massive gamble. The idea is that people will pay an enormous premium for a pristine, heavily guarded escape from the grit right outside their front door.
A fortress of luxury.
Exactly. But having the vision to build a luxury fortress in a bankrupt city is one thing. How do you actually execute it when you barely have any capital of your own to pull it off?
Well, you rely entirely on the exact tools you've been honing since childhood. Leverage, relentless negotiation, and finding the right strategic partner.
So let's look at the actual mechanics of how he pulled this off. In 1976, he sets his sights on what would become his first true masterpiece in the city, the Commodore Hotel.
Right, the Commodore.
This was a dilapidated, struggling, massive masonry structure located right next to Grand Central Station.
The Commodore is the perfect case study for how he operated. It's a fading structure in a prime location, it's bleeding money, and it's in a neighborhood that, at the time, felt dangerous and forgotten.
But he doesn't have the cash to just buy it.
Right. Trump didn't have the tens of millions required to just buy it outright and fix it up. What he had was an option to buy the land and an incredible instinct for leverage.
So what does he do? He looks at the city of New York, which is desperate for any sign of economic life. They're desperate to show that businesses haven't completely abandoned them.
Right.
And he manages to convince the city to grant him an unprecedented 40-year tax break.
40 years. Let's just pause and really appreciate the mechanics of that move.
It's absurd.
It is. He argued that his renovation of this one single hotel would single-handedly revitalize the entire Grand Central neighborhood.
He essentially monetized the city's desperation.
Exactly. He told them, I will bring this dead zone back to life, but you have to make it worth my while by completely freezing the property taxes for 4 decades.
It's brilliant. He didn't have the money to build, so he used the city's promise of future zero taxes as collateral to make the deal viable.
Yes.
He essentially sold the city of New York on the idea of a revival to fund his own project. It's the ultimate fake it till you make it move, but on a massive municipal scale.
And once he had that massive tax abatement in hand, the economics of the project changed entirely.
Because suddenly it looks like a great deal for investors.
Exactly. It made the project incredibly attractive for a partner with deep pockets. So he traded the municipal leverage he had aggressively fought for in exchange for corporate backing.
Enter the Hyatt hotel chain.
Right. Hyatt had the capital and the operational credibility. Trump had the land option and the tax break.
So they partner up.
Yeah.
And they completely gut this rotting masonry structure. They wrap it in this gleaming, highly reflective glass facade.
Very 1980s.
Oh, totally. And it opens in 1980 as the Grand Hyatt. And it is a colossal success. It's shiny, it's modern, it's completely unapologetic in a city that had been severely depressed.
It was the ultimate proof of concept for him. It proved his highly contrarian theory was actually correct.
People wanted the glitz.
Yes. His concept of luxury, of glitter and shine, could actually pull people in and generate massive revenue in the New York of that era.
And suddenly, the name Trump becomes synonymous with Manhattan's fresh start. He is no longer Fred Trump's son from Queens doing the gritty work of property management.
No, he is the guy who brought the shine back to Grand Central.
Right. But the Grand Hyatt, as successful as it was still a partnership, right?
It was.
It proved he could play the Manhattan game and win, but he wanted a monument to his own philosophy. He didn't just want a successful building. He wanted to forge a brand.
And the Grand Hyatt gave him the momentum, the media attention, and the capital to do something entirely on his own.
Okay, so what's the next move?
Well, in 1983, he realizes his most famous project, the one that would cement his strategy forever, Trump Tower.
Set the scene for us. Where exactly is this happening?
He goes to the absolute epicenter of Manhattan prestige, highly exclusive Fifth Avenue.
You can't get more prestigious than that.
Right. He acquires the site of the former Bonwit Teller department store, which sits right next door to the world-famous jeweler Tiffany & Company.
It's the ultimate location. But he wants to build high. He wants to completely dominate the skyline.
And that's a problem.
Right, because New York has incredibly strict zoning laws about how tall you can build based on the size of your lot. So how does he get around that?
Through a brilliantly executed legal maneuver within those zoning laws, he buys what are known as air rights from Tiffany & Company.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of air rights for a second, because it sounds a bit abstract, like you're buying air.
Yeah, think of it like an airline overbooking a flight, but applied to city blocks.
Okay.
So the city has a strict capacity for how much total building volume can exist on a specific block. Every lot has a theoretical maximum height it's allowed to reach.
Right.
If a building, like Tiffany's, is relatively short and doesn't use all of its allowed vertical space, those unused vertical feet, the empty box of air above their building, those still hold legal value.
Oh, wow. So it's like Tiffany's didn't use all the seats on their flight, and Trump basically buys their empty seats and stacks them on top of his own building.
Precisely. He bought Tiffany's empty sky.
That is wild.
By acquiring those rights, he legally shifted that unused volume sideways onto his property, and that allowed him to bypass the standard limits and build a towering 58-story skyscraper right there on Fifth Avenue.
It's just an incredible utilization of the rules. And once he secured the height, he applied the aesthetic. If the Grand Hyatt was a test run for luxury, Trump Tower was the uncompromising realization of it.
Oh, absolutely.
The interior is famously dripping in opulence. We're talking pink marble everywhere. An 18-meter-high waterfall right in the atrium. Tons and tons of polished brass.
It was unmistakable.
And crowning the entire structure is his own 3-story, gold-decorated penthouse.
And this is where we see a really fundamental shift in business strategy. Trump Tower was no longer just a residential and commercial building. It was functioning as a massive habitable marketing instrument.
I mean, think about the luxury items you might buy today, right?
Mhm.
A high-end watch or designer bag. You aren't really paying for the gears or the leather. You're paying to project a status to the people around you.
Exactly.
It feels like he took that exact retail psychology and applied it to millions of tons of concrete and glass.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this. At this point, does the architecture even matter anymore? Or was Trump Tower less about real estate and more about building a giant 58-story billboard for himself?
Oh, it was absolutely a billboard. The physical building was just the vessel for the brand.
Wow.
He was no longer just selling square footage, he was selling access to a very specific lifestyle. He was selling the idea of wealth, the illusion of limitless power, and uncompromising luxury.
So the name becomes the product.
Yes.
All right.
With Trump Tower, the name Trump officially detached from just being a family name of outer borough builders. It transformed to a global lifestyle brand.
It all comes roaring back to that underlying philosophy, doesn't it?
The killer mindset.
Exactly. The mindset his father taught him. To be a winner, you can't just be quietly wealthy in Brooklyn. You have to force the world to look at your success.
Right.
You have to build it 58 stories high in pink marble and stamp your name on it in giant brass letters.
Every square inch of that tower was designed to project absolute victory and dominance over the environment. It is the literal physical manifestation of never showing weakness.
It's a staggering journey when you lay it all out mechanically like this. I mean, we started with Fred Trump's outer borough rentals, highly profitable, utilitarian, but completely devoid of glamour.
Right.
We looked at the installation of that relentless killers and losers, zero-sum philosophy. And we traced Donald's test run in Ohio, where he proved he had the operational mechanics to turn a bleeding asset around.
And then you have that massive pivot, walking away from the safe money to make an incredibly risky, contrarian bet on a bankrupt, dangerous Manhattan in the 1970s.
Right, running into the burning building when everyone else is fleeing. Using pure municipal leverage and negotiation to flip the Commodore into the Grand Hyatt.
Securing that 40-year tax break by essentially monetizing the city's desperation.
And finally, the crowning achievement of Trump Tower, where he legally buys the sky above Tiffany's to build a monument that transitions a real estate developer into a global brand.
He took the tangible elements of real estate, bricks, mortar, steel, air rights, and turned them into the intangible, a brand built entirely on the aggressive projection of success.
It really is an alchemy, taking structural engineering and turning it into retail psychology.
It is.
But it leaves you with a really fascinating question, right? Something you guys can mull over on your own long after we wrap up today's deep dive.
Yeah, because the creation of this brand relied entirely on outsized luxury and the absolute projection of winning within the high-stakes transactional world of New York real estate.
Exactly. But if the name eventually becomes more important and more valuable than the physical buildings themselves, what happens when a brand built entirely on a rigid zero-sum killers and losers philosophy steps out of the business world and into entirely new arenas?
That's the real question.
Can a brand fundamentally built on never, ever showing a single crack of weakness truly adapt to different environments? Or does the world eventually push back on that 58-story billboard?
It's something to think about.
Definitely something to think about the next time you walk past a skyscraper in your city. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.